Hello viewers and welcome to biology class. I'm your teacher Wamaya Kevin, going to take you through biology form 1 on the cell physiology. The last time we talked about cell physiology, we discussed the definition of cell physiology. Then we went straight to the diffusion. We talked about practical demonstration of diffusion. Then we demonstrated diffusion using a visking tubing and we used visking tubing and iodine solution. The visking tubing had starch solution and the beaker had iodine solution. And we see that diffusion took place up to equilibrium where the two solutions, the solution moved from the beaker into the visking tubing through diffusion up to equilibrium where the two solutions had what? Isotonic solution, where the solution inside the beaker and the solution inside the visking tubing were the same. So today we have continued the cell physiology. This topic still cell physiology. Cell physiology. Physiology. The topic today is still on cell physiology, and we continue on the factors affecting diffusion. Factors affecting diffusion. Factors affecting diffusion. So we remember we talked about diffusion. We said definition for diffusion was a process by which particles move from a highly concentrated region to a lowly concentrated regions. So the rate of diffusion of particles. Before going to the number one factor, we talk about the rate of the diffusion of particle. The rate of diffusion of particles. The rate of diffusion of particle is the time taken. Is the time taken for the particles to diffuse. For the particle to diffuse. For the particles to diffuse within an available space. Within an available space until they are evenly distributed. Until they are evenly distributed. So, before discussing on the factors that affect diffusion, I've been told, factors that affect diffusion, we've been told that the rate of diffusion of a particle is the time taken for the particle to diffuse within an available space until they are evenly distributed. So on this factor, I want to talk about the temperature, what happens when the temperature is high or what happens when the temperature is low. Same to the thickness of the membrane. If the membrane is thick, we are going to see what's definitely going to take place, and when the membrane is thin, what is going to take place. So number one factor is temperature. Number one factor is temperature. Factor number one is temperature. So temperature, we know, is measured by thermometer, and we say we have different types of thermometer. So temperature, at low temperature, particles move slowly. At low temperature, particles move slowly. At low temperature, particles move slowly. Full stop. As temperature rises, they gain more energy. They gain more energy. As temperature rises, they gain more energy and move faster. As the temperature rises, The particles gain more energy and move faster. So you're here being told that at the end, an increase in temperature increases the rate. An increase in temperature increases the rate of diffusion, and vice versa. So the number one factor that affects temperature, being told, is the number one factor that affects diffusion. It is what? Temperature. So when we have the temperature rise, or when the temperature is increasing, the rate of diffusion is also doing what? Will increase. Why? Why is it increasing? Because we are being told when the temperature rises, the particles gain more energy. And on chemistry, we are taught about the kinetic energy. So when the temperature rises, the particles gain more energy and they start doing what? Moving faster. So we'll see, at the high temperature, the particles will diffuse faster on a semi-permeable membrane than when the temperature is low. So if you're asked an exam, explain factors affecting the rate of what? Diffusion. And we talk about temperature. He said when temperature increases, the rate of diffusion will also do what? Will increase, and the vice versa. Vice versa means when the temperature decreases, or at low temperature, the rate of diffusion is going to be low. Number two, surface area. Surface area. Number two, it is surface area. Surface area. Under surface area, you're being told when surface area is high, when surface area is high or large, when surface area is high or large, comma, more of the substance when the surface area is high or large, more of the substance diffuse across than when it's small. Diffuse across than when it is small. Then another point on it, we say a large surface area, does not increase the speed of particles. A large surface area does not increase the speed of particles. It simply enables more particles. It simply enables more particles to diffuse across a given time. Across a given time. So an explanation on that, you have been told that the second factor that affects the rate of diffusion, it is what? Surface area. And under surface area, being told that when surface area is high or large, more of the substances diffuse across than when it is what? Small. So the larger the surface area, the higher the rate of what? Diffusion, and the vice versa. Vice versa means that when the surface area is small, the rate of diffusion is going to be small. And when the surface area is large, the rate of diffusion is going to be large. Another point we have been told is that a large surface area does not increase the speed of particles. So a large surface area does not increase the speed of the particle. It simply enables more particles to diffuse across a given time. It simply enables particles to diffuse. And that means that a lot of particles are going to diffuse across the semi-permeable membrane. That's what we mean by it does not increase the speed, but it enables what? More particles to diffuse across the semi-permeable membrane. Another thing, another point on surface area, we normally use organisms like, we take for an example, elephant and rabbit. Example, we can use elephant, and that is organism A. And organism B, we can use rabbit. So between the two, elephant and rabbit, which one has large surface area to volume ratio? It is what? Rabbit. So rabbit has large surface area, while elephant has what? Small surface area. So the rate of diffusion in rabbit will be higher than the rate of diffusion in what? Elephants. That's why you see, in rabbits, it is small, so it is active. It has active activities whereby it can move from one point to another while riding, but elephant, its speed is so slow. So when the animal is too much active, the rate of diffusion is also going to be active. We say it's having what? A large surface area to volume ratio compared to elephant. So we go to the third one, is concentration gradient, factor number 3. Factor number 3, it is concentration gradient. Concentration gradient. Concentration gradient. That's the third factor that affects the rate of diffusion. So under concentration gradient, right, then I explain, saying that a greater difference in concentration gradient, a greater difference in the concentration gradient, So a greater difference in the concentration gradient between two regions. Between two regions result in a steeper the greater difference in the concentration gradient between two regions result in a steeper concentration gradient and vice versa. Steeper concentration gradient and vice versa. And vice versa. Diffusion is faster when the concentration gradient is high. Diffusion is faster when the concentration gradient is high. And I'll demonstrate using a diagram here. So you are being told that concentration gradient is the third factor that affects the rate of what? Diffusion. So a greater difference in the concentration gradient. A greater difference in the concentration gradient, here it is. So the number one, we draw a diagram to demonstrate it. So we partition it into two. We have side A and side B. So when we say that for diffusion to take place, there must be a concentration gradient whereby now one side has to be highly concentrated than the other side, because when the two sides have the same solutes or the same concentration, the solution is said to be isotonic and the diffusion is not going to take place. So there must be one side being highly concentrated and the other side being lowly concentrated. For an example here, these are the particles. So you can see on side A, it has a lot of what? Particles or solute or highly concentrated. While part B, it is less concentrated. So definitely the particles are going to move from region A to region B. The particles are moving from region A to region B, from highly concentrated region to a lowly concentrated region. So when you talk about the concentration gradient, this is the concentration gradient, whereby we have one side being highly concentrated and the other side being lowly concentrated. And this feature enables diffusion to take place. So in an exam, if you're asked, explain factors affecting rate of diffusion, and you talk about the concentration gradient, simply say, the higher the concentration gradient, the higher the rate of diffusion. You can add that on it. The higher the concentration gradient, it is even written here that diffusion is faster when the concentration gradient is high. Diffusion is faster when the concentration gradient is high. And use this example. I say that this is side A, side B. Then these are what? Particles. So you can see particles are highly concentrated on side A than on side B. So this is the direction. The arrow points the direction of what? Particles, where they are moving from side A to side B. Across. So when the particles are moving from point A to point B, one side is highly concentrated and the other side is lowly concentrated. It's called what? The concentration gradient. Another one is distance that particles have to travel. That's number 4. Factor number 4. Distance covered. Distance covered. That's another factor that affects the rate of what? Diffusion is the distance covered. And that I've been told, the rate of diffusion depends on the distance that particles have to travel. The rate of diffusion depends on the distance that the particle has to travel. So, you're being told that diffusion is affected by the distance that the particle has to travel. As per you, what do you think? If you are given the one side, it is thick, and the other side is thin, where do you think the rate of diffusion is going to be high? Where do you think the rate of diffusion is going to be high? Continuation that we say. So you're being told the rate of diffusion depends on the distance that the particles have to travel in order to be evenly distributed. In order to be evenly distributed. In order to be evenly distributed. Evenly, you can also say to be uniformly distributed within an available space. Within an available space. Within an available space. So here you're being told that when the distance is short, the rate of diffusion is going to be high. And when the distance is thin or large, the rate of diffusion is going to be low. That's what you mean by what? The distance covered. And that we write a large, we're being told, diffusion is faster. Diffusion is faster. Diffusion is faster when the distance involved, diffusion is faster when the distance involved is small compared to large distance. Is small compared to large distance. Compared to large distance. So I've been told, we can add another explanation here. He said that The thinner the membrane, the higher the rate of diffusion. The thinner the membrane, the higher the rate of diffusion, and the vice versa. And the vice versa. And vice versa means that it's opposite. The thicker the membrane, the lower the rate of what? Diffusion. And what are examples of the membrane are we talking about? So example, we say here, we write here example, we want to see an example. Let's talk about example. We are being told the lining of the intestines and the alveoli the lining of the intestine, the lining of the intestine and the alveoli the lining of the intestine and the alveoli, membranes and alveoli, membrane in the lung, in the lungs, have very thin membrane, have very thin membrane. So the membrane of the intestine is also called the intestine, e.g. ileum or small intestine. Its membrane is very thin so that the diffusion of digested food can take place. So that the absorption of digested food can take place. When the absorption of digested food takes place, it diffuses into the villi and microvilli. And lungs, in the lungs we have alveoli. And they are very thin. Why? They are very thin for faster diffusion of what? Gases. When we talk about the faster diffusion of gases, we have two respiratory gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide. So when we talk about oxygen, when we breathe in, it is called inhalation. When we breathe in, the oxygen diffuses into the blood vessel, that is blood capillaries. And carbon dioxide diffuses out into the alveoli, then we breathe them out. It's called exhalation through the nose. That's the example of what? Distance that the particles has to cover. So far we have discussed 4 factors that affect rate of diffusion. Factor number 1 is temperature, and if you can remember, we said that the higher the temperature, the higher the rate of what? Diffusion, and the vice versa. And we said when the temperature is low, the rate of diffusion is low. When the temperature is high, the rate of diffusion is high. Why? Because high temperature increases the kinetic theory of what? Particles. It increases the movement of the particles. They will move faster, and the rate of diffusion is going to be faster. Surface area, I talked about when the surface area is big or large, the rate of diffusion is going to be high, and vice versa. What that means what? When the surface area is low or small, the rate of diffusion is also going to be small. And I talked about example of a big organism and small organism. I say that small organism has big surface area to volume ratio compared to large organism. So the smaller the organism, the higher the rate of what? Diffusion. Concentration gradient. And we said under concentration gradient, for diffusion to take place, there must be two different concentrations. One has to be highly concentrated, the other side has to be lowly concentrated, and demonstrated here. These are the particles. This side highly concentrated, the other side lowly concentrated. So the particles are going to move from a highly concentrated region to a lowly concentrated region. Then you go to distance covered, and we talked about that when the membrane is thin, the rate of diffusion is going to be high. And when the membrane is thick, the rate of diffusion is going to be low. Example, let us demonstrate through the diagram. We have A and B. So A, it is thick, and B, it is thin. So this one is what? Thick, and this one is thin. So you see the distance that the particle is going to cover, the diffuse in. This one it will take a long period of time, and this one is going to take short period of time. So here, the rate of diffusion will be higher, but here the rate of diffusion will be low. So this one is not good in what? Diffusion, but this one is good for what? Diffusion to take place. So you go to factor number 5. Factor number 5. So factor number 5 is the size of particle. Factor number 5, size of particle. So size of particles, you have two types of particles. For an example, let us take a large particle and the other one has to be a small particle. Which one do you think the rate of diffusion is going to be faster? If you have given a membrane, a diffusion has to take place. It has to pass through the whisking tubing. Which one is going to have the higher rate of diffusion? Is it the small particle or the large particle? Which one will be able to pass through the whisking tubing? So, when the particle is small, when the particle is small. When the particle is small, the rate of diffusion will be high. The rate of diffusion will be high. Will be high. Next point is say, small particles diffuses faster. Compared to large particles, which take time to diffuse. So the smaller the particle, the higher the rate of diffusion, and the larger the particle, the lower the rate of diffusion. And remember, sometimes these large particles don't cross through. For an example, on a practical demonstration, here we have our glass tubing and the whisking tubing. Our whisking tubing is half filled with what? Starch solution. And the beaker is filled with what? Iodine solution. So at the end of the experiment, we are going to have this one here. At the end of the experiment, we are going to have our now whisking tubing has swelled up, and iodine solution in the beaker has dropped. Now, get the difference here. Here, the whisking tubing, it is half filled with what? Starch solution. But the beaker is full filled with what? Iodine solution. At the end of the experiment, you can see the water level, the iodine solution level in the beaker has dropped. And the whisking tubing has swelled. The volume of whisking tubing has done what? Has swelled, has increased in volume. That means that iodine solution was able to move from highly concentrated region to a lowly concentrated region. If we compare the two solutions, this one is more, this one is less. So the particles move, or the solution moved from the beaker inside the whisking tubing. And the content of the whisking tubing increased. You can see here the whisking tubing is half filled, but here it has swelled up. The volume has increased. That means that small particles, iodine had small particles. That's why the particles were able to move from the beaker into the whisking tubing like this. The particles were able to move from the beaker into the whisking tubing. But the starch solution, so the iodine solution particles were small, but starch particles were big. That's why you see the starch particles were unable to move from the whisking tubing into the surrounding what? Beaker. That's the differences. Then lastly, number six, we talk about the medium of exchange. Medium of exchange. Medium of exchange. So under medium of exchange, we have two medium of exchange. Diffusion takes place in liquids and gases. Diffusion takes place in liquids and gases and does not take place in solids. Get it right, diffusion does not take place in solids. In solid, particles are closely packed, but in liquids, particles are loosely held, same to gases. Particles are in random motion. So, next point is saying diffusion. We said diffusion can only take place in liquid and what? Gases. But in between liquids and gases, one has higher rate of diffusion than the other one. Which one do you think it is? It is gases. So you say diffusion is high or faster, in gases than liquids, in liquids. So in gases, the rate of diffusion is high than the rate of diffusion in what? In liquids. So those are the main factors that affect the rate of diffusion. Next time you're being asked, please be able to answer them. Let them be in your fingertips and the explanation too. And the explanation are always easy. Like for temperature, just an increase in temperature increases the rate of diffusions. So you go to role of diffusion in living organism. Role of diffusion in living organism. Role of diffusion or the importance of diffusion in living organism. Importance of diffusion in living organism. Number one, we have two main ones. There are two main ones. There are two main. Number one, we have absorption. Absorption of minerals, absorption of nutrients. And number two, gaseous. And number two, gaseous exchange. And we want to split them into two. Let us talk, we say that diffusion has two main roles. Number one, absorption of nutrients, and number two, gaseous exchange. So let us talk about absorption of nutrients. So absorption of nutrients in plants. So in plants, we are being told that plants absorbs water and mineral salts from the soil. Plants absorbs water and mineral salt from the soil. And in human, that is absorption of what? Nutrients in plants. That's why plants can absorb what? Water and mineral salts. What about in animals? in animals is absorption of digested food in the small intestine. In the small intestine. So, from the soil by roots. Here should be by roots. So you see, the root has root hairs and they are very thin to enable the fast rate of diffusion. And in animals, we say that small intestine, they are very thin. Why are they very thin? To enable faster diffusion of what? Dissolved minerals or dissolved nutrients. So when you take food, after digestion has taken place, the food is being absorbed from the small intestine by microvilli into bloodstream. So they are thin to enable the faster rate of what? Diffusion. And talk about gases exchange. Number two, you talk about gases exchange. So in plants, you're being told plants takes in carbon dioxide, and give out oxygen. So this gases exchange takes place through the leaves, through stomata. The gaseous exchange takes place through stomata on the leaves. So the leaves has stomata. Those are tiny openings that enables oxygen to diffuse out and carbon dioxide to diffuse in. But in animals, you're being told we have respiratory surface, and the gases exchange organs in human or in animals. So gases exchange structures in animals include, we have tracheae, lungs, and skin. So we have some organism like frogs or toadstools. They can breathe through the skin. We have lungs and we have tracheae or not on animals. So that's where the exchange of gases takes place. So if you're asked in exam, give the main roles of diffusion in living organism. There are two: absorption of nutrients and gases exchange. So if you have to split them further, you say in absorption of nutrients, you say in plants, roots absorb water and mineral salt from the soil. And in human being or in animals, digestion, the absorption of digested food takes place in what? Alimentary canal, where? In the small intestine. And talk about gases exchange, it's where the plants takes in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen, and animals takes in oxygen and give out what? Carbon dioxide, if you have to split them further. So thank you for today's lesson. Thank you for your time too. See you next time.